and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. The White House has denied requesting a ceasefire extension with Iran as Pakistani officials arrived in Tehran to mediate ongoing talks, amid lingering divisions and stalled U.S. efforts to curb presidential war powers. The U.S. military has released a video warning ships to comply with its naval blockade of Iran or face force, as Treasury Secretary Bessent announced the U.S. will not renew oil sanction waivers for Iran or Russia. President Lee Jae-myung has called for sweeping deregulation aligned with global standards, including regulatory-free zones in regions outside the capital, focused on emerging industries like AI, robotics, and renewable energy. The White House is pushing back on reports that have requested an extension to the Iran ceasefire, as officials say ongoing talks with Tehran remain productive. Washington also signaled that a second round of negotiations could take place soon. Chung Hye-rim has the details.
In a press briefing on Wednesday, the White House said reports that the U.S. formally requested a ceasefire extension with Iran are not true.
Yes, so I saw some reporting, again, bad reporting this morning, that we had formally requested an extension of the ceasefire. That is not true at this moment. We remain very much engaged in these negotiations, in these talks, that these conversations are productive and ongoing.
She added that while discussions about a second round of talks are ongoing, no decisions have been finalized. She did indicate if there is a second round of talks, those would likely be held in Pakistan, which she described as the, quote, only mediator in this negotiation. Senior Pakistani officials, including Army Chief Azim Munir, arrived in Tehran on Wednesday. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai confirmed that by saying Tehran is hosting a high-level Pakistani delegation. Baghai stated that a continuous exchange of messages has been happening since the Iranian delegation returned home on Sunday. He added that Iran's positions have been conveyed and heard, and the visit will likely involve detailed discussions on views of both sides. Despite Vice President J.D. Vance and Iranian officials both noting that significant differences remain, President Trump said in a recent Fox News interview that the conflict is, quote, very close to over. Meanwhile, in Washington, a Democratic-backed resolution aimed at limiting the president's military authority in the conflict failed to advance the Senate. The measure failed to 52-47, the fourth time such an initiative has failed to pass since the conflict began. Chung Hye-rim, Arirang News.
As diplomatic talks appear to move forward, Washington is simultaneously ramping up pressure at sea and tightening its economic grip on Tehran by not renewing key oil sanctions waivers. Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. Central Command has released a video warning that it may use force against vessels that do not comply with the maritime blockade of Iran. The clip, posted on X on Wednesday, calls the blockade a lawful action and urges ships entering or leaving Iranian ports to turn back. It warns that attempts to breach the blockade could be met with force, adding that the U.S. Navy is prepared to enforce the operation. The message also says vessels may face boarding inspections and possible seizure, and advises crews to change course and prepare for boarding. Central Command says U.S. naval ships are patrolling the Gulf of Oman. U.S. President Donald Trump also shared the video on Truth Social without comment. Separately, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the U.S. will not renew sanctions waivers that had allowed limited purchases of Iranian and Russian oil. The waivers, introduced to ease global supply pressures, are now set to expire, signaling a shift toward tighter economic pressure.
We will not be renewing the general license on Russian oil, and we will not be renewing the general license on Iranian oil.
Meanwhile, a Malta-flagged tanker has transited west through the Strait of Hormuz, heading to Iraq, the first westward passage of a ship heading to Iraq since the blockade began. The vessel is expected to arrive in Basra after anchoring in the Gulf of Oman for nearly 2 days before making the crossing. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in Seoul, President Lee Jae-myung chaired a meeting on regulations on Wednesday, where he vowed to streamline regulations for cutting-edge industries. Yoon Jung-min reports.
Streamlining regulations in a way that fits the global standard. That was the key message from President Lee Jae-myung at the Blue House on Wednesday as he presided over a meeting on regulations. He stressed the importance of enhancing the country's global competitiveness.
불필요하거나 비효율적인 규제들을 정리하는 거. 이 규제를 좀 소위 글로벌 스탠다드화하는 거, 국제 표준에 맞춰가는 거. 또 첨단 기술, 첨단 산업 분야에 있어서는 좀 네거티브 규제로 전환하는 게 이런 게 필요하겠다는 생각.
A negative system refers to allowing businesses to perform all actions that are not specifically prohibited. As the president urged officials to boldly do away with regulations that hamper growth, he also called for a careful approach. Another focal point was addressing the heavy concentration of resources in the capital.
지역 균형 발전이라고 하는 게 국가가 생존하기 위한 장기적인 지속 성장을 위해서 피할 수 없는 생존 전략이 됐다. 대규모 지역 단위의 대규모 규제 특구도 한번 만들어 봐야 되겠다는 생각이 들고.
South Korea aims to form regulatory-free zones outside the capital, centered on robots, renewable energy, bio and AI autonomous driving. Along the way, larger financial incentives will be provided for investments in regions far from the capital. Some have called for creating a position that can coordinate issues across several entities to manage complex issues that often emerge in the process of streamlining regulations.
I suggest that we introduce a system similar to the U.S. czar policy. As for regulation-free zones, a czar can be given authority by the president for coordination, because there should be someone who can handle legislative issues too.
The meeting took place after the Regulatory Reform Committee was restructured for the first time in 28 years and was renamed as a so-called Regulatory Rationalization Committee. Following the change, the committee will be headed by the president as chair. Wednesday's meeting was attended by more than 60 participants, including government officials, lawmakers, and businesses. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And now for a closer look on how the situation in the Middle East is rippling through the Korean economy. We're joined now by Song Soo-young, Professor of Business and Economics at Chungang University. Professor Song, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, good morning to you, and thank you for inviting me.
So import prices in South Korea surged in March, marking their sharpest jump in almost 3 decades. What do you think this means for the Korean economy, and how should the government be responding?
Yeah, clearly it is a burden to the Korean economy because South Korea economy has experienced setback in the later part of 2024 first quarter, and that has some ripple effect over the past year. But our economy is on the path to the recovery clearly, and it is well reflected on the rise of the Kospi index from almost 3,000 to double the size. Now, because of the setback and the war occurred breakout in the Middle East, and that turns out to be a really high price increase over the oil supply and some related petrochemical products turns out to be a burden. So it will be materialized over the coming several months, and even though the war has ended immediately, it could have the negative effect will persist for a while. So to that regard, my primary concern lies not in some inflation or import price. Clearly, that is a burden, but the growth rate of the economy is really prime concern over the several months to come.
Right, and the Bank of Korea held its interest rate steady at 2.5% last Friday. How do you think the ongoing war in the Middle East might shape the rate decisions for the rest of the year?
Yeah, this is clearly in relation to the first question, that whether what is the primary concern of the South Korean economy for the upcoming quarters. As I argued in the previous question, that our economy has shown, even though the year-on-year GDP growth rate turns out to be 1.6%, but clearly it will be on the declining phase over the coming months and quarters. So to that regard, even though the Bank of Korea decided to hold the 2.5% of the interest rate because of the concern lies more weight on the upcoming inflation due to the import price increase from the because of the Middle East war. But this year, so currently, I have observed that among the experts to whether to interest rate to remain right now remain a constant over the next several quarters to come, or raise or lower, then that is a really very equally divided among the upcoming interest rate changes. So I would like to put the more weight on the declining interest rate. That would be beneficial for the South Korean economy to recover from some upcoming potential recession to come.
I see. And just yesterday, President Lee called for the removal of outdated regulations to support new businesses. How may this help boost the global competitiveness of Korean firms?
President Lee's emphasis on some deregulation and removal of the unnecessary and the burdensome regulation, outdated regulation, focuses on the issues of the new and some front edge industry, because the front edge industry is quite new to the economy, and then all the regulation may not play a necessary and sufficient role to guide the newly developed and frontier economy. So to that regard, we must make our new regulation as a guiding post, and also necessary update and change and adjustment may be needed for that. But particularly this focuses on some front edge industry. It means that the front edge industry has not materialized the growth rate or return. It implies that the increment of the interest rate might be a burden to these industry to develop and to go into further expansion and to be adopted as a standard for the economy.
Right, and now turning to the labor market, the latest data shows the employment of young people fell again last month, and that extended a deadline that's now lasted 41 straight months. What's your assessment of the job market right now in South Korea?
Overall, the job market employment rate actually hit the record of 69.7%, but quite concern lies in the youth employment rate has been down for 23rd consecutive month, and the number of the youth job has been declined over the 41 months continuously. So this implies that what would be the reason and the cause of youth employment job numbers, and also employment rate has been declined is primarily because of some newly coming industries such as AI and the digital related frontier industry, because they do not need a new entrant employees for their industry. Rather, they will make use of the already has been a little bit old, but well equipped with the knowledge and expertise and experience. So that is one of the primary reasons. And another one is because of even though temporary, the transitory effect on some hospitality industry and the manufacturing and the construction. Clearly, there is some burden because of the outbreak of war and some side effect has prevailed because of the war. So that is the primary concern of the youth employment. And another one is some behavioral aspects could be a cause of the youth employment decrease because the youth working age people would like to wait and rest until they get a very good opportunity to a decent job position. So that is all these factors combined together to help decrease some youth employment problem. But I hope this will be resolved, not soon, but in the long run, this should be resolved, and as long as the economy is on the growth track.
All right, Professor Song, thank you very much for your insight today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Middle East war has exposed South Korea's dependence on petroleum-based products, but the supply shock is benefiting the eco-friendly sector. Our Kim Jun-ong has the story.
Under heat and pressure, this eco-friendly alternative made from starch and other plant-based materials is shaped into plastic bags. As naphtha supplies from the Middle East come under strain and prices soar, biodegradable bags are now gaining unprecedented attention. In fact, this company has tripled its sales compared to last year since the war began.
About 40% of our products are made from plant-based materials, so our reliance on petroleum is lower. That makes supply more stable and price increases more limited than naphtha-based materials.
Once avoided due to high costs, this company's biomass content now costs about half as much as HDPE, the key material in conventional plastic bags. At this restaurant in Seoul, takeout orders come in reusable stainless steel containers. Rising single-use packaging costs are making reusable options an increasingly attractive alternative for many small business owners.
Single-use container prices have more than doubled, and supply has been unstable due to shortages. On the other hand, reusable containers are relatively more affordable and easier to source, so we've increased our use.
Consumers are also responding positively due to the ease of use. After finishing the meal, customers simply scan the QR code on the bag, then enter their address, and the delivery service picks up the container. Collected containers are cleaned at a central facility and sent back to restaurants. Inquiries are also pouring in to this reusable container service provider.
Inquiries have roughly doubled since the outbreak of the war, and we get at least 5 inquiries every day. Reusable containers were once seen as costly, but that has now reversed, with many businesses reaching out to cut costs.
The war has sped up a move away from plastic, but with higher costs and added effort, sustainability remains a challenge.
Our continued reliance on cheap plastic reflects the lack of a proper system to produce high-quality recycled materials. This should be an opportunity to implement measures such as mandatory use of recycled materials and to establish a long-term regulatory roadmap.
What began as a crisis is now forcing a reconsideration of our dependence on petroleum-based plastics and opening new opportunities in the eco-friendly sector. Kim Jun-ong, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he is prepared to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell if Powell does not step down in time. In an interview with Fox Business on Wednesday, Trump said he had held back from dismissing Powell to avoid controversy, but ultimately insisted that he will be fired. Powell's term as Fed Chair is set to expire in May, though his position on the Board of Governors runs through 2028. He has indicated he could serve as interim Fed Chair if a successor is not confirmed in time, a temporary arrangement the Federal Reserve has used in the past when the leadership role was vacant. Arirang TV's special program, K-pop: The Next Chapter, won the PPP Best Program Award in the Culture and Arts category at the 2026 Korea Cable TV Awards held on Wednesday. Inspired by the animation hit K-pop Demon Hunters, the award-winning talk show explored the immense global influence of K-pop. The program garnered significant attention for featuring a special appearance by President Lee Jae-myung. The president sat down with the animation's director Maggie Kang alongside artists including Twice members Jeongyeon and Jihyo, and pop music critics for an in-depth discussion on the future direction of Korea's pop culture and strategic moves within the global content industry. The program was praised for elevating K-pop from a simple musical trend into a comprehensive cultural and artistic value system. It also showcased Arirang TV's unique global reach by actively engaging K-pop fans worldwide.
Good morning, I'm Choo Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Wednesday that Israel is simultaneously striking Hezbollah and negotiating peace with Lebanon. He said both tracks are happening because Israel is operating from a position of strength. Netanyahu said Israeli forces are on the verge of capturing Bint Jbeil, which he called Hezbollah's capital in southeastern Lebanon, and that Israel will not stop until Hezbollah is fully dismantled. On Iran, Netanyahu said Israel and the United States remain completely aligned on 3 goals: removing enriched nuclear material from Iran, eliminating its enrichment capabilities entirely, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. In Turkiye, a second school shooting in 2 days have left 9 victims dead. A 14-year-old student walked into a middle school in Kahramanmaraş province in southeastern Turkiye on Wednesday and opened fire on classrooms of 10 and 11-year-old children, killing 8 students and 1 teacher. 13 others were wounded, 6 of them critically, and the shooter also shot himself dead. Turkey's interior minister ruled out terrorism, calling it a personal attack. Authorities believe the 5 weapons and 7 magazines belong to the shooter's father, a former police officer who was detained on Wednesday. U.S. First Lady Melania Trump walked into Capitol Hill on Wednesday to personally push Congress to pass the most significant update to America's foster care system in over 25 years. Melania called the legislation a, quote, moral imperative. She met directly with members of the House Ways and Means Committee and heard from young people struggling with housing, education, and basic survival after aging out of the foster system. Britain's national broadcaster, the BBC, announced plans on Wednesday to cut up to 2,000 jobs. The biggest layoffs in more than a decade come as the BBC looks to slash £500 million from its annual budget amid financial pressures. The BBC is in the middle of a leadership transition, with former Google executive Matt Britton to take the reins next month, following the resignation of the former Director General over a misleading edit of U.S. President Donald Trump's January 6th speech. Trump is suing the organization for $10 billion in a defamation lawsuit over the incident.
The calendar says it's mid-April, but it has been feeling more like early summer in many regions. And it looks to be as warm as yesterday in western regions today, but the East Coast remains much cooler under easterly winds with highs staying in the mid to upper teens this afternoon. Meanwhile, the air is getting drier with dry weather alerts being issued for many of the inland regions, and that's including here in the capital. And with strong sunshine overhead, extra care is needed outdoors. And this afternoon, Seoul and Gwangju will be getting up to 27 degrees Celsius. Daegu will be topping out at 22 degrees under mostly sunny skies nationwide with clean air quality. Then rain arrives tomorrow across the southern regions in Jeju, which will bring brief relief to the early heat, but still staying above norms. Meanwhile, Jeju Island could see over 100 millimeters of heavy rainfall into Saturday, so plan accordingly if you're visiting the island this weekend.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.